Lord, Lord, how the rain gets a body down, as if tears weren't enough, down come drops thicker than boredom, dum, 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 on the heads of mesmerized seamstresses, on the shoulders of mistresses, on the tresses of dismissed waitresses, adrift in their black skirts and white shirts from awning to awning, yawning at the mountainous clouds and clapping their hands to their mouths to hide the boredom that hangs from the gallows of their throats. Crows must flap, dear, and clouds must burst. Down will come rain, thinner than delirium, on geraniums red and gossamer grey. Spiders are spinnier than Catherine wheels, and round is one way to go. One way or another women are pinned and spinning, till down comes the rain, to douse their sparks. I was born in India in 1942, which was 4 years before partition, and I think my first traumatic experience was being separated from the woman who raised me. Of course, in India, the British in India had servants, and that must have jogged something in me, because ever since then I'm aware of painful situations, and I think they come out in my writing. I've been accused by a number of people of writing about things that are too gloomy. Well, I find that the painful side of life, or the more sinister side of life, more interesting than happy, peaceful, secure things for some reason. And I think probably I have that in common with a number of writers and artists. Gradually I started editing. I was invited to be the fiction editor of Grain magazine, and by looking at other people's writing, I was able to sharpen my critical judgment, which has helped me sharpen my judgment in my own writing, and that's developed quite rapidly over the past 5 years. I'm now the overall editor of Grain, so I'm looking at the poetry as well as the fiction. And I teach writing, and I find these different elements, the teaching and the editing and the writing, they all help each other. It begins between the halves of a cup. The porcelain has little to do with it. It's the cracking that matters. Before the accident, the cup created no stir. It hung on a hook, held tea, lay in suds. When it slipped and broke in 2 clean parts, anxiety seeped between. Now you will never be sure, though the cup was mended, if it will ever safely hold tea again. Certain themes interest me more than others, and almost to the point of obsession, I think. One of them is time, as in Timepiece. I'm constantly aware of time and its effects. And of course this is related to space as well. The limitations that time and space put on people. If you're in one place, you can't be in another. And people become really more conscious of this, I think, when they're away from somebody that they want to be with. And time, when you want to a certain day to come, like little kids wanting Christmas Day to come, but you have to wait for time to pass. And I find these two things very interesting and very frustrating, I think, in people's lives. I like to try and live in the present because of this, try to enjoy the present moment and be completely absorbed in what I'm doing right now, because another thing that time does, obviously, it changes people's lives, it takes people away from each other, it eventually brings people's deaths, and then you have deaths in the family and friends and the grief that brings, and I find that very interesting. Timepiece. I am afraid of clocks because they remind me when they stop that time doesn't. No comfort in their ticking, nor the faces swept by hands, making me believe that noon on a Saturday is always the same noon, the same Saturday. Digital clocks are worse, the advance of numbers. I want to bridle time and rein it to a standstill, but time is a walnut that won't be cracked. I have thought about time till my head has turned into an anvil endlessly struck. I have too much of it. Time to watch the sun in my hanging fern. Time to wash up a glass, dry it carefully with a well-laundered cloth. Time to iron dishcloths. Fill it again, and still have time to go back to the fern and see how its shadow has grown. Many things have grown on me besides memories and mould. The well-meaning hands of lovers, the midnight yowling of cats whose sexual symphony plays to the wilderness of my sleep, the breaking faces of bereft people, the shuffling of bag ladies. I hoard them like shells and stones and buttons. When you can't find an answer, you take a sharp knife and pare an apple down to the core, split the seeds, and there's white inside them that can be cut too. And for a moment you think you've got down to what it's all about. You pour wine and drink to that. The moment passes like a life, and all you have is apple pulp and bits of seed you can't put together. The past is a tabletop, littered and stained. My hands have more memories than Methuselah. Everything they have ever held, tightly or loosely, dropped, smacked, the disasters they've prevented and the creatures they've stroked, linger like guests who outstay their welcome. The evenings and mornings won't go away, crushed inside my living room. I think connected with this is my interest in trees, especially trees in the autumn. I like things at a stage of decay. I'm not so interested or arrested by them when they're new and young, like the blossoms, though I obviously like trees in blossom. But I find trees most interesting when they're starting to turn colour. Not just because they're very beautiful then, but because this is the moment before they're going to die and decay. And I think bare branches are very beautiful. On the cover of my book, the design on the cover of my book is dry leaves, and the book is called Dry Media. The life of the child, whose hands are leaves, lies in drifts in the gutter. Someone will come and clean it up, someone wearing a yellow raincoat, because the rain that started to fall yesterday will go on falling. Sadness is a long rain in an avenue of empty maples, an endless walk in a yellow coat. The child, whose fingers are twigs, sleeps because she wants to. She used to want dolls to dress and lollipops to unwrap, small teapots to fill with brown ink, a rocking horse to ride. She wants now a dream of avenues. The girl whose fingernails are flakes of dry leaf is not to be disturbed. I find the writing process very interesting. Some people plan something in their head, and until they've planned it all in their minds, they don't sit down and write. But my best writing comes completely from the subconscious. When I've tried to plan something, the writing hasn't been good. So I simply have to trust to what's going on in my mind and just let it come out the way it comes out.